Hello and welcome to another episode of Hogger Plays. In my last episode, I quickly threw together 5 things I hope to see during the Switch presentation. And surprise, surprise, not a single thing I hoped for came to pass. We found out a whole load more than we knew before, and that sparked a whole load of debate. So in this video, I'm at least going to attempt to compile all my impressions and look at the system in a level-headed manner. Let's do this! I'm going to start off by covering the hardware itself. The idea of the Switch is something I really liked from the get-go. Of course, with the console being so unique, it's really down to personal preference if you appreciate it or not. However, one thing no one can deny is that the Switch's gimmick actually is a gimmick gamers have been asking for God knows how long. From a personal perspective, I've always been annoyed that you have to buy 2 separate collections for games for your home console and for your portable console. What I've always wanted to do when I pick up a portable console is, of course, to continue the same game session I was playing before I left home. And as a person who mostly plays at home, it's been frustrating to see Nintendo announcing cool game after cool game for the portable console when I'd prefer to play those games at home. As you all know, I'm a big N64 fan, so when Nintendo remade Ocarina of Time and Star Fox 64 for the 3DS, I bought those games, but I always wished I could experience those remakes on my Wii U in HD. With the Switch, that won't be the case anymore. Then we'll have the 2.5 to 6 hours of battery time, which is, truth be told, on the short side. I think they'll address it in some future update. To me, that's not going to be a big issue, because you're never more than 2.5 hours away from an electric socket. Whenever I go by train, I always have my laptop hooked up to an electric socket, because, at least here in Sweden, you do have electric sockets on board trains. During the announcement, Nintendo, however, unveiled a whole bunch of new features, most involving the detachable controllers known as Joy-Cons. Personally, I think that the Ice Cube demo was really weird, and it wasn't really until they explained the HD Rumble that I understood what they were trying to show. However, the feature does sound neat, and I'd say it's no weirder than the Xbox One having those vibrating triggers. I must admit, I initially cringed when Nintendo showed off the motion controls of the Switch. The December unveil trailer gave the impression that Nintendo were targeting their console towards gamers and were ditching the casual crowd. So when I saw them showing off the motion controls and the straps, I was like, oh no, not again. Then my excitement levels went up when I saw the Cowboy trailer. I immediately thought that there was going to be a new Wild Gunman coming out. Then it dropped back down again when I realized it's 1-2 Switch, which is a minigame compilation. That is easily the least appealing game during the entire presentation for me. But from that point on, Nintendo hit high note after high note from my point of view. ARMS was a complete home run in my opinion. Some people have received it like a slightly more advanced version of Wii Sports Boxing, while I initially thought it was like an attempt to do to fighting what Splatoon did to shooters. I'd say that ARMS is neither one or the other. This isn't a casual waggle fest like Wii Boxing, and I highly doubt that this game will keep you entertained for as long as Splatoon. The art style makes me think of Overwatch and Street Fighter 4, which are 2 good-looking games. And Street Fighter 4 here is key, because I read ARMS like a genuine, serious fighting game. Perhaps it's not the same experience as Tekken. It might not be as technical. There might not be an esport around it. But it's a serious fighting game with motion controls, which is basically what we've been clamoring for since the original Wii launched. Splatoon 2 is a game I'm quite hyped for, although the difference from the last game isn't as obvious as I'd hoped for. What they mentioned during the presentation was the inclusion of dual guns, which can be aimed independently if you use motion controls. And you could notice that the character customization options have increased. Something I wanted badly in the last game was actually to be able to select your character's pants because, well, black pumps don't go with everything. My only real complaint of Splatoon 2 is the August release date. To me, Splatoon is a game best played in the summertime, and launching in May, like the original, would have been a way better option. Overall, this was the most solid lineup of software I've seen for a Nintendo console in absolute ages. While it may not be to everyone's taste, there's plenty of games worth getting hyped over. But that's kind of the point. It's up to taste. For those of you who like to play the biggest AAA blockbusters, then the Switch gets some fairly slim pickings. FIFA, NBA, Steep, and Skyrim Remastered seem to be pretty much all the big hitters that are coming out for the system. That doesn't really bode well for the system in the West. One thing we need to consider, however, is the odd choice of release for the console. While most consoles launch some 3 to 4 months after E3, the Switch launches 3 months before E3. It's a fair assumption that Activision aren't going to release a port of last year's Call of Duty for the Switch 3 months before they're going to announce a new game, because that's a recipe for disaster. Now, I'm not saying that each and every single multi-platform games that will be present at this year's E3 or Tokyo Game Show will receive a port for the Switch, but it's more than likely that we don't know about all of the games that are coming out even this year. On the flip side, it seems that some publishers like EA, who didn't present any other games than FIFA, are perhaps skeptical of the system and want to see how it performs before they fully commit. And in all honesty, who can blame them after the poor performance of third-party software on the Wii U? Something that's been discussed back and forth over the past week is the price point. I was quite surprised over the price of the system itself. It's way more than I'm used to paying for a Nintendo system. But then I thought it through, and this is my conclusion. The Switch is a dedicated games console which gives as deep gaming experiences as current game consoles, although with slightly downgraded graphics. Yet it costs less than even an iPad mini. Whether this is a fair price or not is mostly dependent on one question. Do you play both at home or on the go? Or if you're solely the kind of guy who's at home, or gal for that matter, who's at home in his or her big comfy sofa and playing on a 72-inch ultra high definition TV. If that's the case, this is not the best proposition out there for you. But on the other hand, if you both play on the go and at home, this is a bargain. This is a dream come true. What I'm more surprised over is the cost of the Joy-Cons. Yet again, I can understand why they cost so much. After all, a Joy-Con consists of 2 wireless controllers with motion controls, this new and improved force feedback, plus that one of them has a camera built in, and the other has an NFC sensor. All of this naturally results in a higher production cost than a traditional controller would have. But despite this, I completely understand that people aren't pleased. Unlike the Wii U, the Switch isn't really built around the motion controls, and I think it's likely that most players will use traditional controls. And for those players, one could of course argue that the Switch could have been more powerful for the money, and the Joy-Cons could have been cheaper if Nintendo would have made simpler controllers, if they would have made away with the motion controls and the camera, and they would have made the Joy-Cons dependent on the grips to function as a wireless controller. Another thing that sparked controversy is of course online play. We don't really know much about things like price or features. What we do know is that things like setting up lobbies and voice chat will be handled through an app on your phone, and we know that some online features will cost money. We also know that while, for example, PlayStation Plus gives you fairly new AAA games for free every month, Nintendo's equivalent is that you get one NES or SNES game for free every month, supposedly with added online multiplayer, with the downside being that once that month passes, you'll lose the game. In terms of using your phone to do certain things, that's not really a problem. It's a smart way for Nintendo to give their console a more lean operating system and putting as much of the machine's performance towards actually playing games. In terms of the free game you get, I think Nintendo definitely should reconsider, because I think that that's something that lags so far behind the competition that it's difficult to justify. One last thing people debated is the absence of services like Netflix on the Switch. The truth is, of course, that we only know that they won't be present at launch. They might be added at a later date. And my take on this is, of course, that that's a bummer. It's a crying shame, as I think it would have been nice to take your Switch on the train and watch a movie when you're too tired to actually play games. But by no means is it a deal breaker to me. Absolutely every modern device does play Netflix. I highly doubt that there are any potential Switch owners who will be turned away by this because they don't already have a machine that does Netflix. Nintendo have said themselves that this is done to make it absolutely clear that the Switch is a console and nothing else. This is, in a way, a retort to all of those people who have replied to their videos and written on Facebook that this is just a tablet with controllers slapped on. Nintendo said that this is a console and no and then.
That's it.
And then?
No and then. That's all I want. And then I'm gonna come in there and I'm gonna put my foot in your ass if you say and then again.
All in all, it's really hard to tell whether the Switch will sell well or not. The Switch is launching in the middle of a console generation, which may seem kind of odd. I mean, about 70 million gamers have already made up their minds on which hardware to get this generation. And for those who haven't yet made up their mind, they have two options which cost a bit less, are, at least according to rumors, more powerful, and have a significantly broader selection of games available for them now. As with any other console, I think it's very much down to the first year. If the Switch sells well, and the first-party content that is coming also sells well for it, then we can expect to see probably most major third-party software, major blockbusters coming out for the system in the future. So those were my 5 cents on the Nintendo Switch. So what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comment section below, or to the side, or wherever YouTube decide to put it in the future. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe my videos for more. This has been Jacob Holgerson, signing out. Cheers!